Yehuda, says the Baal Shem HaKadosh. Baal Shem writes, teaches, the name of the told us, Yaakov Yosef, one of the students of Baal Shem, brings it down, that Vayigash of Yehuda, that Yehuda was in a very dire situation. He was stuck in Egypt. Yosef was threatening to take away Binyamin, his brother. And Yehuda needed a miracle. He needed some type of amtakas, some type of sweetening of din, some type of sweetening of judgment. So what does Yehuda do? So the Baal Shem writes like this, that Brias Olam Kulei Kaden Kum to the Levushim B'nei Ubei V'chol Min Etzar Yesham Nitzas HaKadosh Baruch Shmai Elo Shu B'soich Kam Levushim, that a person should know that any type of concealment in their life, any type of constriction and hardship that they're experiencing, any type of suffering that they're having in their lives, they should know that all the concealments in the world, where a person is not experiencing the or, the light, where a person is not experiencing the language of the Arizal, the moichin, the intelligence, the mind, a person doesn't understand, doesn't see the purpose, doesn't see how is this connecting to me, why am I suffering, why am I struggling, what's the situation that's so constricting to me. A person should know that all the constrictions in the world is similar to similar to a all the constrictions in the world, all the garments of the world, everything that seems to be covering over the garments themselves is part of the divine. It's like a turtle. That the turtle, the hump of the turtle, the covering of the turtle, the shell of the turtle that protects the turtle, comes from the turtle itself, which means that you look at it and you see that there's something hard, there's something covering, there's something concealing. But we should know that in the depth of that, the concealing itself comes from the thing itself. The concealment in the world comes from Hashem. And the Baal Shem says that Vayigash of Yehuda, what it means in the verse, Vayigash of Yehuda, Yehuda approaches Yosef, it means Yehuda is the idea of praise. And Yehuda approaches Elav, Yehuda is actually approaching Hashem, and he's offering praise, and he's saying, Be Adoni, within me, within the situation is Adoni, is my master. And Adoni also refers to Hashem. He comes to Yosef and says, he offers him praise, and he says, Be Adoni, I understand that the situation that I'm in right now, Hashem is also present in the situation. And this in itself, this awareness itself, brings about the opening of that concealment. The Baal Shem writes like this, the Baal Shem teaches like this, that if a person says, the Talmud brings down, if a person says that I want to run away from my problems, I'm having issues, I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I'm having different concealments in my life, I'm going to run away. So a person like that, he says, is similar to a woman that's has to give birth, and she's in pain. She's having a lot of hardships because she's pregnant. She has to give birth, and it's very painful. Childbirthing is very painful experience. So she said, I'm going to go to another city. I'm going to go to another place. This is the example that Baal Shem Tov writes. So of course the pain follows her. So what is it? What's the answer? What do you do? So the Sasabas brings down from the Baal Shem Tov that a person shouldn't say, I'm going to move on and go to a different situation, but a person should find the divinity within the experience itself. What this means is as follows. There's two ways how to think about this. A person's struggling. A person is going through hardships. And it seems concealing. They don't understand why this is happening to them. It doesn't make any sense, and it really doesn't make any sense. There's no moichin, there's no intelligence, there's no understanding, and there's no or, there's no light. So a person could say, "Listen, I dealt with this issue already. I don't understand what this issue is happening. Let me just ignore it and move to the next thing." So that's one way of thinking. I can't deal with this issue on hand. It's too painful. I'm suffering too much thinking about it. So what I can do is I'll just move on and pretend it doesn't exist, and I'll move on to the next thing. Let me focus my attention on something else. That's one way of dealing with something. But the Baal Shem Tov says if you do that, you're really not really getting rid of the issue, but you're schlepping it along. You're bringing it along with yourselves. So even though it doesn't appear because you move location, you move your attention, your focus to another issue, but the issue was never resolved, and because the issue was never resolved, it will come up again. It's like the pregnant woman who goes to another city and thinks she's not going to be pregnant. She's not going to be pregnant anymore. It doesn't happen. You're still carrying that baby. You're still carrying that thing within you. So even though you ignore it and you're moving on to another thing, it's still present, and it does eventually have to get out of your body. So what's the solution? The solution is option number 2. Baal Shem Tov says the option number 2 is to actually encounter it, to embrace that issue, to say, okay, this is actually an issue that I'm really dealing with, and it's very hard, and there's no light, and there's no moichin, but I own it. I have to recognize this is part of my life, and if something happened to me, or if I'm even the perpetrator of that thing that happened, but if something happened to me, or if I perpetuated this action, and because of that I'm struggling, I'm suffering because of that issue, I made a mistake, and because of that mistake I'm struggling with a certain issue, own it. Say, that's true, but if it happened to me, or if I created it, that means that there's a deeper spiritual soul connection between me and that action that was done. It wasn't random, it didn't just happen, and not only is there a spark of the divine, a spark of Hashem in that place, but it's my particular spark that's connected to that. My particular narrative of my life, in order for my life to reach its fullest completion and its fullest tikkun, is connected to that event, or that occurrence, or that action that was done in the past. Own it. Then, that's step 1. I own it and I say, this is part of me. It is me. Just like I have a hand, I have that experience. This is not something that happened to me, but it's something that's part of me. And I own it. Now I'm stuck with this suffering, the struggle. Now say, where could I find the divine aspect within this thing? Some tiny little measure of divinity, some tiny little measure of Hashem's presence in this experience. What did it teach me? What am I learning from it? How am I growing from it? What is it telling me about myself? What is it telling me about the world around me? How can I learn from that experience? The moment I open myself up to experience the small little spark of a likus, a small little spark of divinity within that experience, the moichin, the intelligence, from that concealment, and it is concealing and it is painful, but I own it, instead of ignoring, instead of pushing it aside and saying, I don't want to deal with it, I can't deal with it. I come, Vayigash, I come and I encounter it, and it says, Be Adoni, I want to find within that experience the Adoni, I want to find the master, I want to find the master of the world within that experience. What is Hashem telling me from the experience? What can I learn from the experience? Try to find a small spark of light, a small spark of understanding. You went through something very traumatic. What positive, tiny, small little positive thing did you experience from that, or you can learn from that experience? Something small. And if you can connect yourself with the moichin, with the intelligence, with the oir, with the light, in the small amount, even the smallest amount of measure, with the experience that you had, or the encounter that you have, or the suffering that you're presently having in your life, then there's a recognition that the entire concealment, the entire lavush, is minei obey, is part of the divine. It's not a real concealment. And the moment you recognize that, the concealment falls away. The moment you recognize that that thing has no power over you, the moment you recognize the small amount of light and the small amount of understanding that you can receive from that experience and from that encounter, or from the thing that you're dealing with presently in your life, that hardship disappears. The suffering disappears, and you experience openness. And this is what happens to Yehuda. Yehuda comes to Yosef and says, I'm going through a very hard time. I don't understand what is happening. I thought that the reason why this is all going through, because this is a tikkun, this is a rectification for something that happened previously. Because maybe we sold our brothers, so therefore we have to be sold into slavery. Something of that. At this point, I don't understand anything. I don't understand what the purpose of all this is. Vayigash Yehuda really goes very deep. He goes to a deep level of prayer, and he finally says, Be Adoni. I think I see a little bit of Adoni. I think I feel and experience a little bit of my master, a little bit of understanding in the experience, with the point where almost on the brink where he was about to give up and say that I don't understand anything. He was able to find some level of understanding, some level of moichin, and some level of oir in that experience, some level of light. And the moment he was able to really encounter in the greatest moment of his darkness, where everything seemed to be totally concealed and bleak and optionless and lack of all hope, and he thought this is the end of himself because he took responsibility for Binyamin. The moment he was able to say, Bi Adoni, within me is my master, within the experience I could find that small aspect of the divine, of Hashem's presence, all of a sudden Yosef was stopping, Yosef was not able to conceal himself anymore, and it was a total revelation of the narrative, and it was revealed that Yosef in fact was his brother, and the story ends in a way that Yosef becomes the mashpir, Yosef becomes the person that can sustain them through the famine and to bring them peace.